my room. It's annoying. That got the start of the broadcast going nicely. There's a fly.
Very good indeed. Thank you for that, Tom. So, I should probably kick it off properly. Hello and welcome to the Berkshire Football Stories chat podcast with me, Rob Davies, Tom Canning.
Hello.
And unfortunately, Abby Ticehurst isn't able to join us this week, but ably stepping in, we have Bob Bacon. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very good indeed. Well, people will probably know that you were a former chairman at Binfield Football Club. You've obviously done the podcast before, and you've even got your own episode in the past as well. What have you been up to lately since we last saw you, since you stepped away from Binfield?
Putting my feet up, enjoying connecting back with the family again. I've been going to some Binfield games, both home and away, which has been really nice. It's great to catch up with so many people, and it just emphasises really that the football community that we're in is really quite vibrant and most enjoyable. And today I've just been playing walking football, which is hence why I'm sat in a Binfield shirt now, having spent an hour and a half running around kicking blokes older than myself.
Nailing your colours firmly to the mast there. So, well, we can have asked for a sort of more appropriate week, I guess, for you to come on the pod. Well, I guess we could get straight into all the news that broke. Well, basically, after the minute we finished recording last week, the news started to break that the vacancy for the Bracknell manager post has been filled by Carl Withers and Jamie McClurg. They left Binfield to join Bracknell. Well, like I say, probably the most appropriate person we could ask to be on the pod at the time. Bob, what are your initial thoughts on the appointment of those two at Bracknell?
Well, I think as soon as I heard that Bobby Wilkinson was coming out of Bracknell Town, my fears were that Dodds and Withs would be an obvious candidate because local lads know the game, know the club, know the area. But I have to say, you know, coming back from the Thatcham game on Tuesday night, where Binfield had won 4-0 away from home yet again, a very impressive performance where, to be honest, Binfield didn't really get out of second gear. And you know, it was an impressive performance, and the style of play has changed over the last 4 or 5 years, which is a huge credit to both of those lads. So when I heard they were going to go to Bracknell Town, I was a bit shocked because I would have hoped, I think most Binfield players, supporters would, that the season would be gone through to the end and maybe promotion. Who knows? It's all ifs, buts and maybes. But you know what? Fair play to them. They've been given an opportunity and take the opportunity.
Absolutely. I think it's certainly fair to say that they deserve a shot at step 3, although, like you say, it is a bit of a shame for Binfield. I mean, they have been very successful in the area, and perhaps the next progression is to a club at the next level up. Go on, Tom.
Do we think that, given the start, that Binfield might be a step 3 club next season anyway?
Oh, well, that's I mean, they've certainly started very strongly, but divisions are so hard to get out of in non-league. You almost always only have one team going up automatically, and then the next position is decided either by a playoff or an interstep playoff or whatever it might be. So unless you're storming the league 20 points clear with 5 games to go or whatever, then it's always a gamble, like to say to sort of say, stick the season out and say, well, yeah, we'll be at step 3 next season anyway, because it's just a tough league to get out of, I guess.
Yeah, I think these leagues are tough to get out of. When Binfield played in the Hellenic, I always used to wait till about mid-October and take a look at the league then compare that with how the league finished, and inevitably there was a big similarity. And currently, Binfield are not conceding goals.
Yep.
They're scoring goals in some volume in both cup and league games, and playing very, very well. Of course, you always hope that with a new two managers going out and a new manager coming in, that there isn't any change of personnel on the pitch, because Obviously, there's a good bond with those lads playing, which could have an impact on the game. But I think, as you say, Rob, it's difficult to get out of these leagues.
Yeah. So yeah. My point is basically that you can understand why Carl and Jamie wanted to go. So it's certainly an attractive proposition. But I really hope Binfield do go up, obviously. But you can't guarantee anything this early in the season. Indeed. Okay. How do we think they'll get on Bracknell? They've started. They had by all accounts, a slightly unlucky defeat at the weekend away at Salisbury. And then I went to see them on Monday night, and they got a point against a very good Hanwell side. That point, I think, put Hanwell up into third. A hard-fought point there, and perhaps they haven't. They've only just come through the door. I think they've had 2 games and 1 training session so far. So it's hard to see any sort of change in how they're going to play or anything like that at this point. But how do you see them going at Bracknell?
I think it's a cheesy phrase, but it is one game at a time, isn't it? You know, I'll hark back to the days of the FA Vars with Binfield, and I sat outside the changing room with Dodds one December day, and he said, "We'll get to Wembley, and we'll get to Wembley by winning the next game." And Binfield took that game as the one, and I think Dodds and Wiz will do exactly the same with Bracknell Town. All they've got to do is win the next game. And then when that one's won, they've got to win the next one. And they'll see progress on the field. They're both influential lads, and the team will pick up their DNA and start operating in a way that will please the fans. Because I really think Dodds and Wiz really want to please the fans as well, and that of course will give the team momentum on the pitch.
Yeah, certainly playing some nice football at Binfield. So perhaps we can expect the same at Bracknell.
Hope so.
Go on, Tom.
I don't think there's any doubt that they will do well. They came in to Binfield without, I fair say, any managerial experience. Bobby will know that better than me.
Yeah, no managerial experience.
But they took a team that they took a team off a very good manager in Roger, and made it better. And they've now got a team off a very good manager in Bobby, and I expect them to improve it. I think they'll do very well. It's still a risky move in the sense that where they were was probably comfortable. They were, flying, and I think the thing that surprised me the most was just the fact that Binfield were absolutely flying, and obviously still are. But I have absolutely no doubt they'll do well. They have the drive and they're a Baker and Underwood Mark II. If I can make that comparison, I don't know if that's fair, but
they're a perfect fit for each other. I said on BBC Radio Berkshire last week that they're yin and yang. They fit perfectly. Their characters complement each other. Their skill sets complement each other. You'll see Carl on the sideline, arms folded, stroking his chin. And you'll see Dodds not standing on the sideline, arms folded and stroking his chin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, just before we sort of move away from this, can't spend the whole pod talking about the move to Bracknell. But obviously, you were the chairman there when they came in. I'm right in saying, Bob. What did you see? Tom mentions they had no particular managerial experience at that point. What did you see in them, and what gave you the confidence to appoint them to the role? Despite that lack of experience?
Well, it was very evident from seeing Dodds on the pitch play that he knew what the game was about. Carl's played well over 650 games for Binfield, so he understands the club inside out and back to front. And they talk sense. They push boundaries, which is good for any club, and they'll push boundaries at Bracknell Town as well, off the pitch. And they do what they say they're going to do, and their connection with players coming in, I think, is very strong. And as they go into the next tier, and they'll see a different type of player, different style of player. I guess the question is, we don't know how they will handle and manage those, but I have no doubt that they'll be successful and create a very, very strong team spirit, because that's exactly what they've done at Binfield. They've created a massively strong team spirit.
Very good. Well, hopefully the future will be bright at Bracknell under Carl and Jamie. But also this week, or last night, in fact, we're recording this on Wednesday, we had the news that Gary Haylock, former Hayes and Yedding manager, also, well, he's got a number of former clubs on his CV, but he has been the man appointed to replace Withers and McClurg at Binfield. Did you know much about this one, Bob? See this one coming?
No, I didn't see this name coming, but Gary's clearly got a good pedigree. I think if I'm right in saying he got promotion with Hayes and Yedding.
Yeah, he got them to
spells there.
He was at the National League with them. So
yeah, he's at Farnborough as well, Bedfont, and I believe he had some. I'm scratching my head a little bit with this one. I think didn't he have something to do with Badshot Lee, or didn't he have some part to play in Badshot Lee last season?
I don't know that. That's I don't know. I have to ask him.
I might have to roll that dice. I think he had something to do. It might be a coaching role or something like that.
Okay. Well, yeah, he's certainly got a long CV, shall we say, of lots of past achievements. So it does a fairly exciting appointment, I'd say. The Moles certainly on the up at the moment. This could be a very good one to watch. How do you feel about it, Tom?
I think that, well, I mean, like Bob, I had no idea, and I think sometimes you can sit and speculate, but just in the end, you don't know. And I didn't really know. I was trying to think. Like, I have an opinion on who maybe the next Maidenhead United manager could or should be, but because there feels like there's a number of people who are at that kind of level, but sort of at Binfield's level and below, you just don't know, because you don't know who's looking, you don't know who's interested. There's people who've been out of the game for maybe a little while. You don't know who has sort of jobs nearby that might be able to come in and do it. You just, I thought it was really great that Roger was back, even for a little bit. He seemed like the most reluctant of caretaker managers, perhaps, but doing what he needed to do, and he won both games as well. So I think this I said it about Carl and Jamie, but every appointment is a risk. And every change is a risk, and this is. I think, Rob, you just said this is their role. This is Binfield's roll of the dice, and we'll see how this one plays out. But I think, looking back at his experience, and also his playing career, someone like Sean Moore is going to look, and Johnny Effigy. Sorry, Johnny, if you're listening, I've probably absolutely trounced your surname there. But they're probably going to be looking at his career, particularly in Ireland, and going, I can really learn something from this guy. Yeah. This guy was a bit of a hero in multiple Irish clubs. Linfield, Shamrock Rovers, Portadown, clubs like this, and they're going to be licking their lips. Imagine Eddie Lee getting a bit of advice from this guy Gary, who's been a bit of a hero and has gone abroad and really done things. I suppose it's as strong an appointment as I think Binfield could make. Yeah,
it might even be considered a sort of statement of intent, shall we say?
Yeah, I think that's probably not unfair. Mm-hmm. It's certainly a statement, and he's got a good side and a good squad there to get on with.
Yeah, very good indeed. Like you mentioned, Binfield won both of their games this week since the departure of Withers and McClurg, going through against Tame United in the FA Trophy, and last night knocking out Marlow of the Velocity Trophy. So 2 cup wins in 4 days in the last couple of days, so that Binfield are still rolling on. But the next game, obviously, in the FA Cup. As we've spoken about Binfield and Bracknell, we'll just touch on that base briefly, because the two sides are our two representatives of the third qualifying round of the FA Cup. Both teams drawn away. Bracknell playing away at Yate Town, same division as them, and Bracknell currently higher in the league. So a decent prospect, perhaps, of them getting through to the fourth qualifying round. Binfield drawn away at Beckenham Town. I tripped over that name last week as well. So Beckenham Town. How did you feel about that draw, Bob?
It's a good draw. I think it's not as if you're playing somebody two levels above. You're playing people on an equal footing, and the game is definitely there to be won.
Absolutely, yeah. As you say there, Beckenham Town also step 4 in the Isthmian South East Division, going well in that division, similar to Binfield actually. So it could be a cracking cup tie, that one. I think.
I think Binfield have probably got the trickier tie.
Yeah, potentially.
Based solely on early season league position, but nothing more than that. But
yeah, absolutely. But obviously, the prize for clubs at this point is they could potentially get drawn against a National League side or something in the similar in the next round. I believe the next round isn't regionalised at all. Is that correct?
I don't know, but the only thing I do know is that you could be playing Oldham, Scunthorpe,
Notts County,
any of those, Wrexham, you know, any of those guys. So
Maidenhead, even for a local derby.
Yes.
Or what's the chances that both teams get through and draw each other?
Oh, that,
yeah.
I mean, that's let's face it. In terms of putting Berkshire football on the map, that's probably the game you want.
Yeah, one team in the first round for sure.
Yeah.
Well, both teams playing this weekend at 3:00. So keep your eyes peeled on Football in Berkshire for results there and all our feeds. So good luck to both sides. Hoping for 2 Berkshire victories. Anyway, before we move on to the rest of the results from the weekend, or overlooking that, as we had Bob on, we thought we'd talk a little bit about the impact of the current situation on clubs. We've just had a pretty stressful 2 years under COVID, where clubs have been forced to play behind closed doors, or seasons haven't been completed, and there's been a lot of stress on clubs. And now we're facing further stress in terms of a cost of living crisis that certainly biting in terms of electricity prices, among other things. I mean, on our Football in Berkshire WhatsApp group this morning, there was a video shared by Lewis Coombs, a BBC journalist, talking to the Didcot Town chairman, I believe, and who was mentioning about all the costs and how they're not quite sure what they're going to do after the next couple of months. I mean, Bob, why don't you talk through? You're a better place than any of us to talk through the stresses that the clubs are under, and maybe, is there anything that we could do at the moment? Give us your thoughts on the situation.
Well, I think floodlights are expensive to put on. I mean, put floodlights on for the game, and you kiss goodbye to £200. With the current conditions of energy companies, that £200 could easily become £600 or £700 a game. Now, I'm telling you now, clubs will not have budgeted for that. Clubs will now be thinking about how they budget for it, and that budget might have to come from other sources. And I guess some clubs might even look at cutting a playing budget, for example. Some clubs might have to think about, well, I can't run with 50 teams. I can only run with 30 teams. I think there's a long-term knock-on effect of this, and I'm really not quite sure what the answer is. I do think having a kick-off earlier on a Saturday is a wise thing to do, but that in turn could result in some people not being able to go into games. For example, my son plays in an under-14s team, 11 aside. Kickoffs are frequently 12 noon. So if I'm playing down at Basing, if I've got to take him down to Basingstoke, for a 12 o'clock kickoff, I'm not back home for 2:30. Well, if the game's already started at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, that's a game I'm not going to. So it could have an impact on fans. And actually, probably at step 5, 6, and 7, quite a few of the players do work Saturday mornings. So that could have an impact on the player side as well. So it's it's a difficult decision for clubs. They're going to have to calculate. Well, if I stay at 3 o'clock and I'm still paying £600, where's that extra? Where's that extra money coming from? Well, it's going to have to. That means clubs are going to have to look to try and get another 40 to 60 people through the gate.
Yeah.
Which in this day and age is not easy, and it's not easy because I think I noticed this when I went to Hollyport. I spoke to a number of people at Hollyport that got nothing to do with Hollyport or Binfield. It was for the FA Cup game, but they were local football supporters of non-league who just wanted to come and watch a bigger game. And so floating fans are there, but also you've got to try and keep the hardcore. So the clubs are going to have to look to see what are they going to do to make the hardcore supporter feel more welcome, and how can they bring other people through the door as well? Because at the end of the day, unless you've got, and I hate the term, but unless you've got a sugar daddy, you're going to have to raise the money through the gates. Now, if you're not raising money through the gates and you can't afford to run the floodlights, you can't afford to run the football club.
Yeah, stark words, really. And I don't know if it's there's, like you say, there's the talk of moving kickoff times earlier, but in general, I'm not sure that there is many solutions. I think there could be some really tough times coming ahead, and so it's probably more important than ever that people get down to the grounds and support their local football clubs, because they'll need.
I'm of a certain age where I can remember the 3-day week, and I was working as a printer at the time, so I'm probably going about 40 odd years ago now, 45, nearly 50 years ago, and we used to go to what was Division 1 games that kicked off at 12 noon all over the country. And the country made the decision they can't afford to put the floodlights on, so we'll kick off at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. And people did it willingly. And there was some big gates around at the time. I remember going to see Leeds United play Leicester City, and that was a massive crowd. So that people went to games like that. People made the adjustment. Now, fans may need to make the adjustments. Clubs may need to make the adjustments. And I don't think leaving it till Christmas with the idea of let's see how we go is appropriate. They need to start thinking about it now.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to go back on, Bob, something you said about ticket prices and on the gate and raising the money on the gate.
Yeah.
Now, I've worked on a turnstile and I did it for quite a long time, and I had especially noticed that ticket prices for a long time did not go up. They stayed exactly the same as they were. And I think in recent seasons, clubs have put ticket prices up bit by bit. Yeah. All I really ever see off the back of that is complaints about £8 for X club, or or £9. Replace it with whatever number you want.
Yeah.
And so it's obviously in my head as a non-league football supporter, and having worked in a club myself, I understand. I get that. If it's £10, it's £10. If it's £8, whatever. If it's £4, fine. I understand but I think there's a lot of people out there that, and obviously this speaks to affordability anyway, because people are going to these things, in some respects they go to non-league football because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So how do we square that? Oh, I'm getting into cliche speak, but how do we square that circle of sort of keeping it affordable, explaining why it's more expensive now? Because you'd think everybody would understand it's more expensive because X, and X at the moment. But I worry, and my concern is that by even putting the gate up by a couple of quid is really going to affect it. And maybe I'm going to answer my own question, but is sort of the answer kids free, special discounts on multi-buy tickets and stuff? I don't know. What do you think about that? Because I see plenty of people going, oh, £8 for whichever club. Yeah. That's a hole, that an S hole for want of a better word.
I think every club has a budget for how to maintain, to look after the club, pay utility bills, and most clubs in this area are run by volunteers. So you can trim some costs, but then you put more pressure on volunteers. And, you've got to be so careful about that. If you put too much pressure on volunteers, there's all sorts of things that break down. And then people lose heart, and then people don't want to get involved. And it's a massive problem. I think all the clubs that charge, where they charge £8 or £10 to come in through that gate, they're not charging that to make 70% profit. They're not. They're doing it to make sure the club is successful, to make sure the running costs of the club are maintained. Even if you take things like training facilities, and I'll speak about Binfield. Binfield use a first-class training facility, but let me tell you, that is not cheap. So that is paid for through subscriptions through the kids programs as well. But some of that money that comes through the gate will go towards that, because the first team use that and train on that facility as well. I do think clubs should have a look at what they do in terms of multiple buy tickets, maybe on a monthly basis. I think that would be a good idea. And then if you're being brutal about it, I think using a facility like Ticket Pass, the club already has the money in the bank, and it's up then to the supporters to go along, or even give that ticket to a neighbour or a friend if they can't go. I think clubs might want to consider looking at doing that. I think you've definitely got to make sure that inside the ground, that the ground is kept tidy, that the facilities are good, the food and drink is of an acceptable quality. And if you do that, people will go.
Well, some good advice there, a good discussion. I think we'll probably be hearing more about this and the general cost of running clubs over the next few weeks and months. So I'm sure we'll either speak to yourself or someone more as appropriate again in the coming weeks. But yeah, it's been a really interesting discussion.
Am I being substituted so early, Rob?
No, you're not being taken off. No.
Oh,
it's
okay.
all good.
I'm just waiting for the shepherd's crook to come out the left side of the screen and yank me away.
Yeah,
we did try to get someone else to come on after you, Bob, but
yeah, is Abby in the waiting room at the moment? I don't know. Yeah,
no one. We couldn't find anybody of suitable quality to follow you, Bob. So we thought we'd ask you if you could stay on for the last bit.
Absolutely. Well, just to sort of round up our discussion of games last week, we mentioned we had the FA Trophy, Binfield through after a victory against Tame. Thatcham, unfortunately, out after losing at home to Dunstable. The reward for those two teams, the reward for Binfield is an away trip to Hendon in the first round proper, and Bracknell joined the competition at this time as well, and they've got a long trip away to Canvey Island. So good couple of hours in a car there to get to the other side of London. So yeah, a long away day, but against a decent club there. So a couple of decent draws following the results of the last weekend. And we also had an FA Vars games last weekend with a few teams from Berkshire going through. Victories for Eversley in California, Hollyport, Ascot and Tadley Caliver, and they're being joined at this round by Berks County and Wallingford and Crowmarsh. Ascot in particular is probably one to highlight, considering they knocked 10 past AEK Bocco. Yeah, 10-1. They actually went 1-0 down in that game, so they came back quite comprehensively to win that one, 10-1. Blimey, have you ever? I'm not sure I can think of a 10-1.
I've been on the end of a few.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can think of one in the FA Vars in recent month or years. Any other massive scorelines you can remember from that competition?
Oh, there definitely would have been some, but
yeah,
there will be some, but they're going to, going into the next round, you'll see. I think you'll see quite a few tight games now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very pleased to see teams like Brimscombe and Thrupp and Tuffley Rovers from our Hellenic days getting through, because those sorts of clubs, they thrive and they need this sort of competition. And plus the fact they're really nice people in really nice clubs as well. So
yeah. been to Brimscombe and Thrupp. I haven't been to Tuffley yet, but yeah, Brimscombe was a very nice away day, very picturesque part of the world. So yeah, good one for an away trip.
But very, very pleased for Hollyport as well. I think, for them getting that penalty win there. I've got a lot of time for Hollyport and the manager and everybody over there. They're a lovely club, and it'd be great to see them make some progress.
Absolutely. Well, the reward for these teams, the draw was made on Monday. Tadley Caliver at home to Guildford City, and the rest of our Berkshire sides have been drawn away. Berks County, who I mentioned, came into the competition at this round. They're away at Chessington Hook. Wallingford and Crowmarsh are away to London Samurai Rovers, and then some pretty long away days for the remaining teams. Eversley in California are away at Crowborough Athletic in East Sussex. Hollyport are away at Lydd Town in Kent, and Ascot United have a trip to Isle of Wight to face Newport. So some pretty big away days for supporters of those clubs. When you're taking teams away to long distance places, such as you'll have a lot of experience of with Binfield, Bob, when you're waiting for these draws, would you prefer a home game or a local game, or what's the sort of benefit of the long away trip?
Well, the long away trip, very simply, is the camaraderie that it just genders in that coach. It's when Binfield did it, of course, it was all done in the teeth of COVID, so you weren't doing it to get a share of the gate money because there was nobody there. As soon as that draw comes through, I'd get the call saying, can we go and get a quote for a coach? And so you'd be on the phone then, and it's as times change. You used to be able to pick up the phone and ring a coach company, and they give you a number there and then. But now they have to send you a formal quote. You have to fill in all the details, and you invariably miss something, and they send it back. So that's a bit of a painful exercise. Then you got to plan where you're going to meet and what time you're going to set off and stuff. And you just get caught up in the whole aspect of it. It's just great fun. It really is.
Well, a few of our sides have that to look forward to over the coming weeks then. So as we're looking ahead to games in next weekend, we've already mentioned the FA Cup games on the men's side of the draw, but there's also Vitality Women's FA Cup games on the women's side of the draw. We have three women's clubs. Sorry, Tom. I thought you were trying to say something.
Coughing. Sorry.
Three women's clubs around in the draw. Caversham United are at home to, or four, I guess. Caversham United are at home to Eversley and California Ladies. Milton United host Ascot United, and Tilehurst Panthers women are hosting Long Crendon Ladies first team. Tom, you're going to talk us through a couple of these fixtures, I believe.
Yes. This is Abby's notes she sent to me. So Caversham United v Eversley is a replay of the same round last season, which Caversham won 4-2 on their way to Wembley. Or was it QPR? They went to QPR, didn't they? In the later rounds of the Women's FA Cup. It's not sure really how this one's going to go. Eversley have only played one game. Caversham are still finding their feet in the new division. They were promoted from Division 1 North of the Southern Region Women's Football League last season. So that will be, to Division 1 North of the Southern Region Women's Football League last season. So it will be really interesting to see how that goes. Milton United versus Ascot United. It's Ascot's 10th year in the competition. Milton play in the division below. Both are unbeaten. Obviously, this is both Southern Region Women's Football League teams. You've probably got to put the money on Ascot just based on what we say a bit at times about the difference in the levels. But we've also seen a few times this season that actually matters less than it has done in the season. So you've got to say Ascot probably favours from that one. And Tilehurst Panthers, Long Crendon, I know absolutely nothing about, but see how that one goes.
Very good indeed. Also, to add to the analysis here, Abby will be doing her weekly 3-to-watch games for fixtures on the women's side. So if you're looking for a fixture to go to on Sunday, you've got those 3 FA Cup games. But if there's another one that takes your fancy, check out Abby's article, and she will guide you as to where the hot games are on this week's of fixtures. And talking of that, Tom, obviously we've got the 2 FA Cup games that are away this weekend. But if you were to pick out a game, perhaps maybe more local to here, where would you be going this weekend?
I think the tastiest one on the list, on the big list on our new fixtures and results service, is probably going to be, for me, I think it's going to be Berks County v Sandhurst Town, the battle of the 10 goal scoring sides.
Yeah.
I think that one probably looks like the one that's going to be the strongest matchup. But elsewhere, Reading City are obviously doing very well in the league. They're at Broadfields United. I have no idea where Broadfields is. Rob, you may. I presume it's around the sort of the London area somewhere.
Yeah, it's West London. They played Rayners Lane ground share there. So, or is it the other way around? I can't remember. But the 2 clubs play in the same ground anyway.
And I suppose we've got to look for a hint of a Devonshire Chesterfield v Maidenhead United.
Absolutely, yeah.
We be in for one? Just on the Sunday as well, you've got Reading FC Women at home to Spurs in the Continental Cup. Which a much needed win in whatever competition it comes. I think if Reading could get that one.
Absolutely, and I believe that's Reading's first home game of the season as well. So hopefully, a bit of a crowd for them at the Select Car Leasing Stadium. I wanted to say the Madstad, but the Select Car Leasing Stadium.
Well, they did say they might sponsor us at one time, so let's keep going until they do.
Select Car Leasing Stadium it is then. Brilliant. Very good. Okay. Do we have any other business here, Tom? Maybe congratulating someone from Chalvey Sports on a long tenure at the club.
Left. Scott Young. Bob, you know Scott. He's just stepped down. We're going to get him on a separate podcast in the next not very long and have a chat with Scott. Scott stepped down. I'm not sure how many years it was, but he's been there a while, seen the club through.
I think he's been over there 40 years, Tom.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay.
I think and he understands what it takes, and he's really thrown his heart and soul into it. You know, he's done a fantastic job.
I think it's fair to say, just from reading the tweet, his sort of resignation tweet, as we all have to do these days when we leave things, I think he's just worn himself out by the sounds of things, and I feel like that's probably a position you got yourself into as well.
Oh, absolutely. I once I'd made the decision to stand down, the first Saturday after in the new year, when I wasn't thinking about things that could go wrong, things that should go right, as you know, the relief was just amazing. And then, to be fair, it was taken up by my family time and getting that balance right, and that is very, very important. And that's what I said earlier about volunteers. You know, if you run volunteers into the ground, forgetting the fact that their foundations are with their wife, girlfriend, children, whatever, then you run a big risk of just wearing people out. And I think Scott and his family's been involved in Chalvey for such a long time, and I think much credit goes to him, because he's stood up when times have been very, very difficult, and he's always done it he's always played it with a straight bat, to confuse analogies across sports.
Nothing wrong with that.
Very good indeed. Well, I don't know if Scott has any desires to go back into football at any point, but I think, considering how you started this podcast, Bob, it will be probably hopefully a comfort to him that he can step away and enjoy football from afar, shall we say, over the next coming months. And genuinely, actually, Scott's first appearance on this podcast, when we were doing them during lockdown, I think that's one of a really good episode. If you want to listen about something we were talking about earlier, similarities to what you were speaking about, Bob. He was speaking about the impact that COVID might have and the lack of sponsorship coming in, and how it would affect clubs like Chalvey. So that one's still available if you want to listen to it. It's a really, really good listen, I think.
I'll chuck a link to that one in the show notes for anybody who doesn't want to go scrolling back through. I'll just pop that in there. Rob, just before we finish, can I just flag that the Double Barrel Brewery Goal of the Month competition is open? Head to the website. There's a story up there. I'm going to try and find a better way of flagging it to people than what is currently, because it's. But yeah, submissions open for that.
Brilliant.
I think I've already seen the winner.
Have you?
And it's not the one that everybody said to me is going to be the winner. I think I've seen the winner already, but I don't choose it. So I can vote, but I don't choose it. So we'll see.
Very good. Well, something to look forward to there. Any other business before we wrap up, gents?
No.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, we have to say thank you very much to Bob Bacon for ably stepping in and providing all the insight that we loved on this show. So great episode there. Thank you very much, Bob, for joining us.
Welcome.
Cheers, Bob.
And yeah, all that's left to say. Or actually, Tom, you might want to wrap up and tell them exactly where we can do find all our output.
Oh, yeah, yes. Go to www.footballinberkshire.co.uk. You can find us on Twitter, FI Berkshire, and you can find us on Facebook by typing Football in Berkshire into that little search box. We're also on LinkedIn, Instagram, and bizarrely TikTok. I'm still working out what to do with TikTok. So we'll. But Bob, you've got your video is in the correct way up for TikTok.
Aspect ratio, yeah.
Aspect ratio. Thank you, Rob. So at the moment, I'm only just putting kind of some headlines and stuff on there. They take quite a long time to do, and I don't really know if I've got the wherewithal to be doing all of that. So we'll see what comes of that.
See what comes with that. Well, something else to look forward to there. So anyway, thank you very much, Tom. As always, say goodbye.
See ya.
And it's goodbye from me as well. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.